going to have to pick up on the women's vote, quite apart from anything else, substantially. How are you going to do that?
Well, I'm not going to try to pull the wool over anyone's eyes, women's or anyone else's. I will be myself. I will not try to remake myself. I imagine that as my political circumstances change, people will see different aspects of my political character and they'll make up their own minds.
On other policy issues, you've written about the Commonwealth taking over responsibility for critical policy areas like health, education, transport, where the states are perceived to be failing in their responsibilities and where the Commonwealth provides most of the money. Can you briefly elaborate on that? Because that is, I mean, the government now is already walking down that road to some degree, but it sounds to me like you would be much more ambitious on that front.
Well, I don't think the government has any serious policies to tackle the dysfunctional federation other than to try to bribe the states. And we know that bribing the states does not work. I was a minister for many years in the Howard government. I know just how difficult it is to get the states to use Commonwealth money effectively. What I proposed in my book was that we should retweak this dysfunctional federation to give the national parliament the same power over the state parliaments that it's long had over the territory parliaments. That's all. Now, not all of my colleagues like this, and I'm not saying that it should be coalition policy, but we do have to fix the dysfunctional federation. We can either put the feds in charge or we can give the states taxing powers commensurate with their spending responsibilities, and I don't really think that's a viable option.
I think you're being a little bit disingenuous. That would involve more than a tweak. But you've also said, despite the unpopularity of work choices, that the Australian electorate will be more ready to embrace workplace reform again by the next election than they were at the last one. Why do you think that when work choices was rejected so comprehensively?
There is no doubt that the Howard battlers were dismayed by the scare campaign against work choices. There's also no doubt, Kerry, that one of the reasons why we have emerged from the great financial crisis is that we had flexibility and freedom as well as fairness in our workplaces. Now, my fear is that by re-regulating the labour market and by putting the unions once more in the driver's seat, next time there's a recession, we won't get out of it the way we have got out of this one.
You also said in your book that one way for a Liberal government to fund its reforms would be to raise the pension age at least to 70. Would you really be prepared to go to an election selling the idea that people should work at least until 70?
I make the point that people who can't work for whatever reason will always have the generous safety net that they deserve in Australia. This was all about trying to ensure that there was no age of statutory senility, that people weren't suddenly hurried out of their jobs because they were turning any particular age. That's what it's about, allowing people to be economic participants for longer if that's their choice. But again, like everything else in my book, Kerry, these were put up as ideas for the coalition. For them to become policy, there's a whole policy-making process that has to be gone through, and that applies to my ideas just as much as it does to the ideas of other frontbenchers.
You've got less than a year, maybe as little as 6 months, to get all these policies out there, the big one being climate change, but many others as well. When do you start?
Malcolm Turnbull, to his great credit, had made a large start on this. Kevin Andrews was involved, and my hope is that we will have substantial policy essentially finalised early in the new year. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't be flexible right up to polling day, but certainly I want us to have the kind of platform that we can credibly take to an election ready early in the new year.
You didn't really expect this job. How do you feel right now?
Look, Kerry, it's a bit scary, but it's very exciting. It is a tremendous honour to lead a political party. Greatest honour any political party can give someone is to lead it, and I want to be worthy of that honour.
Even if you only get one shot?
That's life. I will never die wondering.
Tony Abbott, thanks very much for talking with us.
Thanks, Kerry.